Welcome back to the channel. A very warm welcome to you all. This is a very different video today. So today I'm looking at hanks of silk and hanks of cotton and how I tame them or get them under control and prepare them for when I'm using them. So I'm sat here on a Friday evening at about 9:30. So the lighting is terrible. So I'm sorry if there's shadows. I'm hoping that there's enough lighting that you can actually see what's going on. But it's the best that I can do. And it's the only time that I can actually get this recorded and share it with you. I'm sat here this evening thinking, you know, I really do need to get these hanks sorted. So it was a perfect opportunity for me to share with you how I handle my hanks or tame my hanks. So let's drop down and have a little look at what I have in front of me. So you will see some things here that are familiar and some things that are not so familiar, but just so that we know what we're looking at. This nice big fat juicy one around the outside, this is my Silks for You hank. For those of you that are interested, this is in colorway PR109. Like I say, the lighting is not fabulous, but it's basically graduating from like a lilac purple into a royalish blue into, well, a sea blue and then back. So that is my hand-dyed Silks for You silk. And again, this is very, very similar to the type of product that we're used to working with if we're doing cross stitching and you're working with your standard DMC skeins. This basically is, each one of these is your usual 6 strands that you would separate down. Okay, so that is basically just a very giant DMC skein, only it's a silk. Okay, that's the only difference of this versus a normal DMC skein. This stuff in the middle, however, is slightly different, but it is still a hank. So this here is Floche. It's still a DMC, but it is thicker than the standard DMC 6-stranded cotton. I done a test stitch using some Floche, some sulky, and 2 strands of the DMC standard cotton. And for me, the Floche was actually a game changer. Now, I will say, I think that is only because I work on the counts of fabric that I do. So for those of you that work on a 36 count and above, then obviously I am aware that the sulky would be the game changer for you, because the sulky, they say that the sulky is the equivalent of 1.5 strands of DMC as a single strand. This Floche, however, is more than that. So because I have a real serious bugbear with the coverage of the normal 6-stranded cotton, 2 strands in a full cross in either blank B5200 or 310, I have found after doing some test stitching that for me, on my counts that I'm stitching on, I mean, I tend to really stick more with the 25 count, 28 count. Sometimes I might creep into a 32 count fabric, and I do actually stitch in 18 counts for some of my full coverage. I'm feeling that I'm much more enjoying the coverage and the experience of working with the Floche versus the normal 310 DMC 6-strand and pulling 2 strands and doing full cross of 2 strands. That's my personal preference. However, if you are a person that is working on a 36 count or higher, then of course, yes, your single strand of sulky is probably a total game changer for you. But for my counts and the counts that I stitch on, the sulky, 1 strand is not enough. 2 strands just doesn't sit right. Whereas with the Floche, I found that it sort of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I got the coverage and it sat nicely. You're probably wondering, well, if this is a hank, why is this so small? Well, the difference is the Floche comes single strand. So this here is you work with it as single strand. So each one of these is a single strand. It's not, you don't separate this down. So let me just show you. So this here each one of these is your single strand. So you would pull a single strand from this. Okay, so that is the reason that this is so much smaller than this, because this is still what you would see if you was to open up a DMC skein where you've got your 6 strands where you separate the strand down. Okay, so that's just as an explanation as to why they look so different, why this is so small. This is single stranded, this is 6 stranded. The reason I'm showing you this is for those of you that have ever worked with any type of hank, the principle really is the same. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a single strand or whether it's a 6 stranded. The principle really is the same for each one. Now, the only variation to what we have in front of me is the fact that the Silks for You 6 stranded monster hank here is hand dyed. So because it's hand dyed, obviously the variation of the colour goes around the hank. And the hank is basically, it's just a massive, great big loop. Just the same as it would be for a DMC skein. Okay, so the only difference with this is basically just all looped around and then tied in a knot so that it stays in a loop. So I think what we'll do, I will show you how I handle the big boy first. The big, because that's more like what people are used to working with. And then for those of you that are interested in seeing how I handle the single stranded cotton hank, then I will do that afterwards. So we'll move these off to the side. I've also got here a piece of paper or card and some scissors. Okay, so that's all you're going to need. So you're just going to need your hank, some scissors and a piece of card. So most of the time when you get a hank in this size, especially in this size, it needs to be contained. It's contained while it's being dyed, and it's also contained for when it ships. But you can see around the edges here, we've got like these bits that loop in and out of the silk. I don't know if I can bring that up to the camera. Yeah. So there's one there, one there, one there. It's just basically a single piece that's being woven through and then tied up. That is one for when they're doing their dyeing, and 2 for whilst it's shipping. It just keeps it so that it doesn't get all tangled up. But at various points in the strands, you'll see these. We will be removing these. So when looking at the skein that comes specifically from Silks for You, I think Mrs. Sado's silks are not much different to this for the big hanks like this. When you're trying to work out where you want to do your cut, you want to take into consideration what length you want to cut it, and also where in the variegation you'd like to cut it, because depending on whereabouts in the variegation you cut, you could end up with sort of, I don't know, just that portion, in which case you won't have any of this colour over here. So I then try and work out roughly the lengths that I'd like and have them as even as I can, but across the different colour variations. So roughly, she says roughly, I will go about 15 inches ish, give or take a bit. So 15 inches takes it to there. So at that point, I will then sort of work my way to where I want my colour variation. So I've got a little bit of the light blue there. You need to decide whether you want, you know, the big chunk of the purple or the big chunk of the light blue or the big chunk of the dark blue. Let's just say, for instance, that I went here. So 15 inches would give me most of the purple, most of that blue, and pretty much all of the light blue to there. So then if I'd done another 15 inches, that will get me something similar. And then this one, it finishes on the dark blue. And if I take that all the way back round, it will give me mostly this blue, the light blue, and a little portion left of the purple over here. So I'm going to go roughly 15 inches for my length. So now we've looked at our hank and we've looked at our colours and we've looked at our variations all the way around, where we'd like our cuts. My knot is over here where it all comes together, but you don't have to cut it there. You could leave that cut and basically just dismiss that the bits that are tied if you want to. There's no hard and fast rules here. I'm going to ignore the fact that this tie is here, because that makes no odds. It's just as I might lose a little bit from that single bit, but I would rather do that and know that I've got all the different variations in all of them. So first things first, we need to snip out the little holding threads. Now these little single strands, these are the ones that are basically what hold all of your strands together, and they're also I think they do this for part of the dyeing so that it keeps it all nice and doesn't all separate. So in comes the handy dandy scissors, she says, and I'm going to go round and I'm going to snip out and just, she says, what is that there? That's supposed to be over there. I'm going to snip out the holding threads. And they're just weaved in and out of the skeins, of the skein. So we'll take that one out. And then I've got another one over here, which is actually part of that knot. We'll come back to that one, and we've got one over here. You see how it's weaving in and out, and it's just holding all of the thick strands together and keeping everything nice and neat. So we're going to snip that one out. And then just separate that little bit and unweave that like so. So that was the two holding threads that were holding everything in situ. And then this bit over here is where my join is. Now, just because, like I say, just because the join is there doesn't mean that that's where I need to snip. So I've also got a holding thread that connects that. So I'm going to do nothing more than to snip that. But I'm also, she says, so that. And then we'll pull that bit out. Now, at this point, I can see where the join is. This is my knot that joins. But just because my knot is there doesn't mean that I have to use that particular point to do my actual cuts, which I'm not going to. So first things first, I'm just going to cut this. Worst pair of scissors in the world to be doing this. There we go. So we'll get rid of that. Now, I already said that I want to go halfway through the purple for my main cut. So first things first. So I've just picked up some embroidery scissors because that's always helpful. So I have my actual scissors here. So like I say, I'm looking for around 15 inches in length. So I'm going to get my tape measure. I've already decided that I'm going to make a cut sort of halfway through the purple. So I'll just double check myself and make sure that 15 gives me, yeah, so 15 will give me purple to the light blue. And then I will get 15 from the light blue to the dark blue. But I'll still have some of the dark blue. So yeah, that'll do. So all I'm going to do is decide where I'm going to put the cut. think that's where I'm going to put it. So literally, we get our handy dandy scissors and I'm just going to snip through it. Just like that. Scary, isn't it? Okay. Make sure that we get all the way through it. Okay. I'm not all the way through it. So there we have the first cut. Now, we're going to lose the little strand there. But if that's all I'm losing, I don't mind at all. So we'll move that out of the way. So now I want 15 inches, which will take me to there. So this will be our first length. And again, all the way through. Okay. So that is our first one. There. And then we want, I think it's about 15 there. Give or take. I just fold that in half then. Like so. And as you can see, we're not losing anything. We're just basically, so I've just, don't want that like that. I'll go back there. So that'll be my next cut there. So literally cut through. Which then gives me these 3 individual sets. But I've got good variation across all of them. So they've all got a bit of all of the colours in. So for me, that's perfect. They don't always come like that. It's very dependent on what colours you've got in it and where the colour transition takes place. Sometimes there's just no way of getting the length correct and all the colours in it. But for me, that is perfect. So I've got a little bit of everything in there. Now, because it comes without any labels or anything to sort of tell me what it is, I make up my own little label-y type thing for this. So then I get my piece of card. Now this is pliable, so it's not sort of thick. This one is like super thick, which is a little bit more difficult to bend about. So I go with something that's pliable. So it's heavier weight than paper, but not really thick so that you can't bend it. Okay. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to sort of label up, if you like. So I'm sure there's different ways that you could do this. This is just how I do mine, she says. So I've just got 3 bits of card there. And it makes no real odds. This is completely personal preference, but this is just how I do mine so that I've got it all under control. And I'm going to get some sellotape. And all I'm going to do is make a label out of this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this card. And I'm not going to use the pattern side. I'm going to use the white side. Again, personal preference. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my thread. And then what I want to do is try and sort of squeeze it like a label would be. So I'm just literally squeezing it around my threads. Like so. And I'm rolling it into there. Okay, just so it's like that. And then I'm going to get some sellotape and I'm just going to sellotape that down. So nothing too fancy here, she says. And then I'm just going to stick my sellotape onto that label without going over the threads, like that. And then I just roll it together and give it a squish. Okay. So all that does basically is gives me a bit of a label. All right. So I'm going to do that for all 3 of them. Do the next one. Again, grab my threads. Not really messing with them too much because I don't want them to get all messy, because they do get out of hand very, very quickly. So again, I'm squeezing the threads and then rolling the paper around my new little divided amount. And I mean, the idea is, oh, she says, the idea is you want it sort of, you don't want it too loose because you don't want them all to just sort of slip out. So again, pull it a little bit taut, roll it around like so. Get some sellotape. And then again, being careful not to get it on the threads. Just sellotape that round. And I can move them down a little bit to give myself some wiggle room. Final one. And then I slide it down. Now, at this point, you could leave them like that. I'm not going to, because it always worries me that it's gonna slide off and they're just gonna fall apart. So what I will do at this point is literally tie a little knot at the top, she says. So I just divide it as best I can. So by doing it like this, it makes it so that I can pull a strand from here if I want to do it like this. But if I decide that I'm using it on a particular project and I want it onto a loop, like I have on my castles in the air, I'll put a picture in here so you can see it. Then I will do it slightly different as to how I put it onto the loop. But for storage and when it's not actually set up for a project and I just want to be able to sort of take from the skein, for me this works perfectly. So I will do that to all of them. So literally I'm just roughly deciding halfway. Sometimes you might need to slide your little label down a little bit. And then literally I'll just tie that. Give it a little tug. And then push the label back up. And that just secures everything. So it's all nice and secure. Okay. So that way I know that my label can't slide off. And they can't just slide off and basically turn into a hot mess now. At this point I will label my threads and put the number on, because like I say, the Silks For You don't come with a label or a number, and it's so easy to forget because literally they just write it on a bit of plastic. Look, that's what you get your silk in a bag with just PR109 written on it. So R109. There we go. So then all I will do, and at this point you can use these little stragglers. Yeah, this is what I'll use my stragglers for. So at this point, I'll find something that's a little heavy. I'm going to use my phone, she says, to just stick that there like that. And then all I'm going to do is divide this into three equalish parts, without trying to separate my little 6 strands. And I'm just going to really, really loosely braid my thread. Very, very loosely. And the reason for doing it loosely is that when I want to pull the strands from the top end, I want a nice loose braid to allow for the thread to come out. And then when I get to the bottom, I'll push it all together. And at that point, we can use some of this, she says. Use a couple of strands. A couple of strands of that beautiful silk. And then all I do is I just put a little tie around the bottom, like so. She says, good old silk, nice and slippery. Come on. And then that way it keeps all of my threads nicely braided, but it's not, I've not braided it so tight that it's going to make kinks, but I don't want it so loose that it can all fall to pieces and just flap around, because as soon as it does that, it gets a bit unruly. So let's just do the same with this one. So again, we're going to divide it into 3 bits ish, give or take a bit. Like so. Stick something a little heavier on it just to stop it from being like a rogue. Straighten those out a little. And then all I'm going to do, again, just loosely braid. I don't want to kink my thread. See, I love doing this. I could sit and do this all day long because it's just so lovely to just see all the variegation and the colour. Okay. Let's get this. Stick him in there. And again, just tying overhand knot. Nothing special. Nothing special here. Just like that. All contained, ready to use, not going to go anywhere, not going to fall off. And then when I'm pulling my strands, so let me get a needle and show you how this works. It's very similar to how I've shown before. Let me find a needle. So get a needle, and then now is this gonna show with this light? Maybe I'll move it down here. So then all I'll do is when I want to pull a strand, literally give that a tug. It's going to unravel from the top end, which is super easy because this is our little knotted end. And then when I pull this, you'll see it sort of smush up the thread, and then it releases. That's it. And then I've got my strand of cotton. It has all equal lengths. So now I'll just make sure that as I pull that thread out to use, I'll leave it orientated in its colour or in its colourway. And again, there we go. So all I'll do is pick the thread, give it a tug, which is the top bit. That orientates it, so I know that's the top end of the thread. And then when I pull this, I've got hold of it, so it's orientated the right way. So when I put my two threads together, you can see the variegation. She says, let me zoom you out. The variegation is in the same direction because that's how I've pulled the threads, like so. That goes from purple to dark blue to light blue. Now that I've pulled that thread, I need to do something with it, don't I? Can't waste it. Can't waste the thread, people. So that is it. That is how I handle a big hank. A big hank of silk from Silks For You. Very, very easy. Very easy. So that is one big hank. All sorted and ready to use. So if we now come to my Floche, principles really are the same. The only difference is this is a single strand. It's a single strand. The Floche comes as a hank, and at the bottom you've got like a little elasticated tie. So first things first, I'm going to take that off, but don't throw that away because I'm going to use that. So I'll move that to one side. And then we've got our label here. So I'm going to slide my label off like so. So once we've slid our label off, we need to turn it into our big circle. Now, that isn't the circle. The circle is divided again. So we just need to find it. So it's about there, I think. Is that it? Yep, that's it. So it's a very big circle. Like so. Okay. So all we've done is we've gone from halved like this, and then literally you open it out and you'll see that it's a giant circle. Like that. Big circle. Let's move that out of the way. So, and again, this is very similar to the other one, that it's got a tie right here. There it is. There's my tie. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that, she says. It does help if I use the embroidery scissors, right? So I'm going to cut that there. And then where that comes together, I'm going to cut straight through the middle, like so. So basically cut it in half, like this. Now, the difference with this one is I just want equal portions. So to get equal portions, I'm going to sort of try and fold it into thirds. So I'm just going to measure it up against itself, but not really mess with it too much because I don't want it to... There we go. So basically that's our thirds, like that. So then when I've got it laid out like this, I've got a loop sort of there, end there, and a loop there. So all I'm going to do is cut the loops. So come down this end, cut that loop, come up this end, cut that loop, and now we have three separate sections. But as I said, this is single stranded, so as this is now is how we'll use it. It won't slide. You won't be trying to divide each of the strands. The strands are ready to use. So at this point now, we already had the label for this one, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bit of that card or paper. Doesn't matter what it is, any card or paper will do. And all I'm going to do is wrap it around the end. So I'm literally just wrapping it around the end of the skein, like so. Squeeze it together. Basically, all we're doing is trying to make it small enough that the label fits over the top, like so. And then all I'm going to do is push this through, and then you can see it's coming through the other end. So I'll give it a little squeeze, and then I pull. Now, I've put it on around the wrong way. It doesn't matter because I can just slide it out the other end, like so. And then we just, literally that bit of paper goes away. So now we've still got our DMC label on there. And again, the same thing's going to happen here. I want to divide the end. And I'm going to tie it into a little knot. Like that. Give it a little tug, but then I'm just going to push this label back up. Like that. Just so it's nice and tight. Okay. Just like that. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Now, because we already had this divided into 3 sets when we done our cutting, it sort of holds its own shape. And again, we don't want to do this tight. We want a very loose braid. So I'll stick my phone on the top of it. I just want to braid nice and loosely. It needs to be loose, one, because you don't want, I don't like to kink the thread, but secondly, it makes it so that when you try and pull the thread, to pull the length of the skein that you want, you can actually get it out. If you braid too tight, you won't be able to pull the thread out. It will just make a hot mess. So then when we get to the bottom, like so, this is where the elasticated bit that it came with comes in handy. Literally, I just put the elastic back over the bottom, like so. And then that way, this one is all braided, all ready to use. It's got its label on, so I can see what it is, and you can easily pull the thread. So there you go. I've now got all of my threads at the ready to use. They're not all going to get in a hot mess. I can put them in a project bag like this and they will hold together because they're all tied together. Same for the Floche. Or I can put them in the drawer. Yeah, basically great for storage. Great for when you've got them with your project. It just keeps them contained so that they don't make a whole hot mess, because otherwise it can get, yeah, really, really tricky. If this lot all untangles, or basically unbraids and then turns into a tangle, it just makes it a hot mess to try and actually work with it. So, but there you go, people. That is how I handle mine. I'm sure there are many other ways you could do it, but that's just how I do mine. So there we go. I have all of my hanks all tamed, all at the ready. Now I just need to get some stitching done. So thank you so much. Hope it helped you. If you've got any questions, of course, put them in the comments box below. If you've liked this video or it's been super helpful for you, and you know you're interested in any other videos that I upload, please don't forget to hit the little subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any further upload videos. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Again, always thank you.